It's just normal latency. It should be fine. Hi everyone, we're live. We'll be starting in just a second, as usual. Let's pause that, we don't need that playing. Oh, I should put the focus assist on. Even though Teams doesn't care that focus assist is on. Well, the good news is we can change our profile pictures in Teams again.
Oh, I know. How did that happen? Oh, it just you don't know.
I don't know. It just started working again.
Whatever.
Listen, I don't question things around here. I just accept.
Seriously. All right, I'm sending out the tweet.
Cool.
It is posted. I will retweet.
Episode 178. Just so you know. Surface earbuds looking good, Daniel says. Heavy waves in the chat.
Nice.
Are you ready?
I am now recording.
I am now recording as well.
All right, 3, 2, 1. And now I got to put in my RTX voice. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 178 for May 8th, 2020. Hey everyone, Daniel Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast. Technically, this is almost a part two, as we did one earlier this week on all the Surface stuff, which I think we're going to mix into this. Zach, are we going to mix it?
We probably won't, because it went on way longer than I thought it was going to. So we'll just do a sort of roundup of the hardware stuff at the end of the show.
Gotcha. But if you guys want to still see that, it should be on our mixer.com/Windows Central and our YouTube channel. It's like 90 minutes of us just talking about the Surface stuff, which we'll do again here, but that one's a real long deep dive. Anyway, we'll be, this week talk about the new Surface products, but first we'll talk about the new Windows 10X evidently coming to single screen devices first, and dual screens being pushed off a little bit. And we'll talk about the reasoning behind that and why we think it's probably a good idea. I'm sure most of you would probably actually agree as well. Then we'll head into the Xbox event. There was one this week. It was a virtual one where some new games were shown off, but some fans weren't too happy about it, including our own Jez Corden. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll go into the Surface Duo emulator, which was updated. And Zach will tell us what's new and what he thinks about that, as well as probably the status of Surface Duos. I'm sure a lot of you guys are wondering. That is Microsoft's forthcoming Android phone, which was not announced this week for release, but still, we do expect it soon. And then finally, we'll do the Surface hardware, including Surface Go 2, Surface Book 3, Surface earbuds, Surface Headphone 2, and we'll also, I guess, mention the dock. And if you are watching this live or came back to our Mixer channel and all that, watching the video, you probably noticed. If not, I may notice now, I am actually wearing the Surface earbuds for this podcast. I'm very happy with that. This solves the problem for me with not having any wires. But we'll talk about the earbuds, of course, as well as the new app, which finally came out today as well. So we'll be talking about all that a little bit later. If you do have questions about those devices, of course, save them towards the end. When we're talking about it, we'll try to look at the questions in the comments, but it's a little hard to do that live too. But we'll definitely take some questions at the end of the podcast. Zach, how are you doing on this super busy week that we've had?
I'm not too bad. I just got a notification that some of the stuff I pre-ordered from the hardware has started to ship. I think it's just the free accessories though, because for some reason in the UK, if you pre-order a Go 2, you get a free mouse with it, or if you pre-order a Book 3, you get a free pen with it, which is nice. I'm not complaining, but but they appear to be shipping earlier than the actual products, so that's quite interesting. But yeah, I'm pretty good. How are you?
Hanging in there. Definitely a fun week. It's always good when everything kind of worked out this week. And what I mean by that is when we do these big announcements, like we're reliant on PR to get us information and give us the assets. And in this case, they delivered the products to us 24 hours before we got to do the news on it. And so all that makes our jobs easier, more enjoyable, because when we do these events and post everything, we like to give as much info as possible. I like to think my Surface Book 3 post, for instance, has like basically everything you need to know about that device outside of some little tiny details. And it's just so that makes me happy. And hopefully you guys were happy too, seeing all the coverage we did, and you weren't left with a ton of questions about it. So, but I am looking forward to the weekend. Saturday, UFC returns. We haven't had UFC in, I think, 4 or 6 weeks or something like that. I think it was 6 weeks now. So there's going to be a big pay-per-view event on Saturday, which means I'm doing Domino's Pizza. I'm going to get some friendly alcoholic libations. I'm going to enjoy myself while we can. I haven't been able to get a haircut. Actually, I'm kind of okay with my hair like this. So whatever. There are a lot more serious things in life going on right now. And before we get started, too, I just want to mention Zach actually had as far as what we're watching, what we're doing, just a quick shout out. Zach noticed this show on Netflix, and I watch it, called Into the Night. I think a lot of you guys in this audience here would be very into it. It's a post-apocalyptic show. If you're looking to reduce anxiety, probably not the best show to watch. The show, and it's not a perfect show. There are a lot of things that they do that are inexplicable or bad decisions or just weird kind of writing. I was just that left me scratch my head. But the overall ride is very cool. Long story short, the sun starts murdering humans. I know that sounds weird. The explanation is actually really cool. It's a fun show, 6 episodes, 40 minutes. It's one of those you're going to binge watch. It's done very well. It's a European production, so you get this cool mix of Italians and Russians and British people. NATO is even involved. Zach recommended it. I watched it and had a blast. And then also telling Zach about Upload on Amazon is another show I think a lot of people in our audience would like. It's kind of a comedy. It's a much lighter show. This is a show you can watch and start to feel good about the world, kind of. But it deals with basically dying and uploading yourself to computers, and it's a lot. But it's a really neat mix of it's sort of like Black Mirror, but happy, or happier, I should say. But the way they do tech, when you watch it, you're going to be like, oh, that's pretty clever, or I could see that happening. They do a lot of neat stuff with technology that's just kind of fun. So, golden age of TV.
There's actually been lots of new stuff to watch, even though there's a pandemic going on. Likely because it takes a long time to make a TV show or a movie, and most of these things were filmed months to years ago. So I would imagine a lot of film productions and movie and TV productions are sort of I guess push forward a lot of releases that they already have in the bag, right? If they filmed it all and everyone's at home right now is the best time to get that out in front of people, so they've got nothing else to do, right? So I think that's why we're seeing an uptick in new shows and stuff on Netflix and streaming services.
Yep. Also, we're also just talking about this before the podcast. Ricky Gervais's Afterlife season 2 is available now, and that's
what would you class that TV show as? Is it a comedy or a sad drama?
British. It's British.
It's good. That's what it is. It's
depressing.
Yeah.
It's sad, but it has this really biting, scathing humor to it, and there's always an upside to it. It's a person struggling with life, basically. But the humor, I mean, I'm laughing out loud. I love Ricky Gervais. I think
me too.
Him and me, I could probably get along very well. But as I was telling Zach, he's like me, but funnier and British. But his views on life are very much aligned with mine. So go check that out. It's all good stuff. And for those, for people wondering with the headphones, I'm using the headphones to listen to, not for the microphones. I may try that in the podcast, but listen, we record this. We're streaming and all that, and I have a really nice, giant microphone here with noise canceling, echo canceling kind of stuff. So for the podcast, I prefer to use this instead of the ones on the earbuds. I will for the review, which should be out next week. I'll talk about the microphones, which I haven't really tried yet because I don't call people, but I will make an effort to actually call people. Anyway, let's get started. Enough of the chit chat stuff. Let's get into it. Why you guys are here. Windows 10X on single screen. Zach, why don't you tell us about this story, which broke Monday and was kind of a surprise. But this is, and it's interesting because it was Panos Panay who broke the news. But then again, that reflects his new current role, which is basically the front facing, I can't talk anymore of Windows 10.
Yeah. So this is information we already knew. In fact, we knew this months and months and months before Windows 10X was even announced. This was, remember, codenamed Windows Lite or Santorini. And from the very beginning, this has always been something Microsoft was building out as something that could run on single screen devices as well as foldable dual screen devices. But it was weird when they announced it in October that it would be coming to dual screens exclusively with no plans to bring it to single screen in the future. We asked Microsoft this. We said, so is this like a timed thing or will it be coming to laptops later? They said no. They were sticking to their guns. Windows 10X was for dual screens only, even though the information I had and Dan had and lots of other people who write about Microsoft had suggested otherwise. This week, they have finally sort of confirmed that, yes, that turns out Windows 10X can run on single screen devices. And in fact, that's what we're going to deliver first now. And I think Mary Jo reported this already a few weeks ago. She sort of mentioned that she was hearing that Microsoft had shifted strategy internally and were delaying the sort of dual screen efforts to prioritize the single screen efforts. And by shifting air quotes strategy and delaying things here and there, they've not changed too much. Like I said, Windows 10X has always been able to run on single screen. It's not like they didn't do that at all and now they're having to start building that functionality out. Windows 10X has always been able to do this. They've just said, we're just going to launch it on single screens first. They don't need to change any lines of code. It's already all done. So this isn't huge news in that regard. But Microsoft made it huge news because they were the ones who said Windows 10X was going to be for dual screens only. So they put themselves in this hole and are now having to dig themselves out of it. So what they're saying here, they're saying the reason they're changing strategy is to meet customers where they are and are listening to feedback. The ongoing sort of pandemic and stuff. It doesn't make sense for Microsoft to launch an experimental premium device category. Most people, spending lots of money right now are doing it on essential things, not, experimental PCs. That Surface Neo would be. So it makes sense to bring it to single screen devices. Panel says, word for word, with that increased focus comes a shift in priorities for Windows 2. The world is a very different place than it was last October when we shared our vision for a new category of dual-screen Windows PCs. As we continue to put customers' needs at the forefront, we need to focus on meeting customers where they are now. Our customers are leveraging the power of the cloud more than ever, and we believe the time is right to lean into this acceleration in a different way. With Windows 10X, we designed for flexibility, and that flexibility has enabled us to pivot our focus towards single-screen Windows 10X devices that leverage the power of the cloud to help our customers work, learn, and play in new ways. Interestingly, he keeps mentioning the cloud. I think this is the Chrome OS competitor stuff we were hearing about originally. You remember when Windows Lite was supposed to be this thing that was supposed to compete with Chromebooks and stuff and be powered by Microsoft Edge and sync with OneDrive the whole time? Windows 10X is still that, and now Microsoft is sort of refocusing on that aspect of it rather than it being something that can run on dual screen PCs. So that's quite interesting. He also says, these single screen devices will be the first expression of Windows 10X that we deliver to our customers, and we will continue to look for the right moment in conjunction with our OEM partners to bring dual screen devices to market. So no time frame for when dual screen PCs will be coming. Will they ever come is a question. I think they will. I think this is still going to happen. I don't know if Surface Neo will launch as it was announced, though. It depends how long the delay is. If it's only a few months, if Windows 10X with dual screen launches in the spring of 21, for example, I think Surface Neo could still launch as is. But if they delay past 2021, I don't know if Surface Neo still holds up as, as what it is.
It becomes that question. I mean, there's this question, right? Are they going to use this time to revise the hardware at all on Surface Neo? My guess is probably not. But we don't know, really, because, I'm not sure it's enough time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not really sure it's enough time to, unless they've already started to maybe make some tweaks. And if we announce this now, we may be able to pull this off by, say, spring. Who knows? Because I think a lot of people, would be talking about, could be the bezels, could be also Intel. We don't really know much. This thing's powered by the new Intel Lakefield chipset. We don't know the status. Intel says it's supposed to be ready soon, but who knows, especially with the shipping delays and everything that's going on right now. So it's a little hard to, I don't know what else they would change with it, but maybe,
So like I said, no time frames to when we can expect dual screen or even single screen Windows 10X devices. Microsoft hasn't said expect it next year or expect it in 6 months or whatever. So we just don't know when it will be ready. And I think Microsoft doesn't know either. Obviously, they have dates internally where they hope to be done. But if they aren't sure if they're going to meet that date, then of course they're not going to say anything right now. That's the mistake they made in October, is they said holiday 2020 without knowing for sure if they could actually beat that deadline. Unfortunately, they can't. So, I think it makes sense for them not to mention any sort of time frames at this point, because if they're not sure, they're not sure. And as I've said from the beginning, Windows 10X needs to be perfect out the gate, so they should take as long as they need to make it that. Because if it launches and it's problematic, people won't buy it, and it will be dead in the water. They also mention, Panos also mentions like a refocus effort in innovating with Windows. I think it's fair to say over the last few years, Windows has sort of taken a step back from the limelight. It's sort of been in the background. Not too much has been happening with Windows. And that's because Microsoft sort of pivoted the platform away from being something that was sort of being marketed for consumers. And they started focusing more on what enterprises wanted. Not that Microsoft stopped doing that, but they just sort of focused on it more. The last, I think, 4 Windows 10 releases have more or less been very featureless. There's some features here and there, but for the most part, they've been addressing enterprise customers' needs and leaving the consumer side of things alone. I'm not sure if this sort of blog post is confirming that they're going to shift back to focusing on consumer features and stuff, but I think they want to relight the fire that Windows is a little bit. At least Panos does. He's talking about things like, innovation, using Windows to innovate in software, which Windows hasn't innovated in many spaces in a while because Microsoft is scared of making change. But to innovate, you have to make change, right? And I think Windows customers are very averse to change, so it's harder for Microsoft to innovate. They tried to do it with Windows 8, and that sort of backfired quite significantly. Admittedly, that's a bad example because they really that was a huge change. You can innovate in small steps. You don't have to change the entire UI in one day. But perhaps we'll, even on the Windows 10 side, not just 10X, maybe we're going to start seeing some new features and changes there as well, which I'd be very interested to see. Because you've got to remember, now Windows 10X is launching on single-screen PCs. It now competes with Windows 10. Microsoft are going to have 2 operating systems on the market that will be competing against each other on store shelves.
Yeah, and this is where I think, and I just want to just 2 things. One, someone's mentioning about how, Microsoft tipped their hands now and showed their competitors, blah, blah, blah. Listen, it's an open secret. I've been saying it for like 2 years now about dual screen devices. Everybody is working on this or experimenting with it. It's not like Microsoft came up with the idea. I would say Microsoft's the furthest along. That said, let's just say like Google had no concept about dual screens or its potential, which I find really dubious since they're clearly optimizing Android already for devices like the Galaxy Fold and now the Flip. Like they're already going down that route. But let's pretend that they had no idea. It doesn't matter really, because it's not like when Microsoft came out with 10X, it was already pretty far along, and they still got some time to go. You can't just go in 6 months, code your OS, APIs and apps and everything like that, and catch up to where Microsoft is. You just can't do it. And Google actually proves this over and over again. It takes them look how long it took for them to actually catch up to iOS. For a long time, Android was like good because you can like hack stuff and do all this stuff. But it was, the memory management was terrible. Battery life wasn't good. It had a lot of issues with apps and consistency. Design was all over the place. When did like Android start to get good? I'm going to say like Android 6 or 7 is when they finally started catching up to Apple. And even still, I'm using the Galaxy Z Flip. It's still one of my favorite phones, but I have a dual SIM on my iPhone as well. And, I'm using, whenever I pick up iOS, it is still, and I know people are going to hear this, iOS is miles ahead
Heresy.
of how like smooth and fluid it is compared to Android. And I don't think I don't think Android's ever going to be as smooth and fluid and consistent as iOS. So like this whole idea of like, Google or someone else, may now, oh, they're going to start to do dual screen too. I think that's dubious. And I think even if it was true, you just can't, engineer a new OS this quickly. Look how long it's taken what it was iOS is now iPad OS. iPad OS now is better. It's got some trackpad and mouse support. But then you go read the reviews and it's still like, well, it's not there yet, right? Even I was like, oh, maybe this may be it. But no, it's not, because it's hard work. There's a lot of moving parts there. So I'm not really concerned at all, because if you look at something like the ThinkPad X1 Fold from Lenovo, we saw that in CES. When I met with them, did some interviews with their engineers, they had already been working on that hardware for 3.5 years to get to that point, which is why Dell, when they showed they had their prototype and I cracked it like when I was on Instagram, because Dell had only been working on it for like 6 months. And that was a reference design from Intel. But Lenovo had been working for 3.5 years with, I think it was Sharp, who does the display. So like the idea that any company, the only company that can maybe who has experience with this would be Samsung. But like if Samsung makes a 10 or 12-inch foldable PC or foldable device, it's probably going to run on Windows 10 or 10X at this point, because it's already got an OS made for it. And we all know Android tablets don't sell anyway. So like, again, I don't know what the threat here is necessarily. I know it's nice if we can get these devices, but as Zach pointed out, it's better that 10X is actually more evolved. We get, the emulators out there, APIs, and it matures a little bit. And the hardware will only get better too. So I'm not really concerned about like Apple's not coming out in 2021 with a foldable iPad. It's just not going to happen. Apple may have something, my guess, at least earliest 2022, but probably 2023 before they come to this.
It's also important to remember as well, Windows 10 launching on single-screen PCs opens it up to a much larger market. Originally, when it was just exclusive to dual screens, the sort of focus group, the market who that was aimed at is very small, right? Like, not everybody's going to go out and buy a $2,000 Surface Neo on day one. But now it's coming to, I guess, $250 Chromebook competitors, as well as obviously premium PCs at some point as well. That anybody can now pick up a Windows 10 PC. You can walk into a Best Buy or a PC World if you're in the UK, and you can look at a cheap laptop with Windows 10X and buy it, or you will be able to anyway. And that's going to open the door to a lot more people. So that's another reason why Windows 10X needs to be perfect out the gate, because now you're at the mercy of normal people, not tech enthusiasts, people who don't know how software and technology works. They just use it because they need to get their work done. So I'm going to be very interested to see how Microsoft goes forward with Windows 10X on single screen devices. The question I have is, which Surface device will it launch on first if dual screens aren't coming? I think it'll be Surface Go 3. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, so I think what they're really doing here with 10X on single screens, of course, is there's two things, right? There's the whole Chrome OS, which, if you're outside the US, Chrome OS is still really a novelty. Chrome OS for consumers is not that big in the United States. I will say you see a lot of commercials for it. I will say HP, Dell, Lenovo are both, or all three of them are adding more devices that are Chrome, so it's creeping up. It is a lingering threat that Microsoft is, that's why Windows 10S was a thing, came out to the market. And that tells me, you say about two OSs competing. I still think what we're going to see is Windows 10 Home and Pro will be on bigger traditional laptops.
I agree, yeah.
And what you'll see are new, really thin client devices that are going to be really sexy and thin, sort of like what we've seen with the Yoga Book from Lenovo, that little small 10-inch foldable PC with the dual screen kind of thing going on. Yeah, Surface Go makes sense. Maybe something like, of course, the Surface Pro X, if they can get ARM support going. But it's going to be new devices that you're going to look at, and they'll have limitations. They won't have an NVIDIA RTX 2060 GPU. They won't have an 8-core Intel i7. Like there's going to be this different. And I just had an article I wrote about a few weeks ago saying we're going to see this bifurcation of laptops that are bigger, heavier, but more powerful, discrete local processing. And then you're going to have these super thin clients that, will be always connected, cloud-based, really light, thin, 2.5 pounds, really nice displays, but you won't be able to do stuff like, AutoCAD or, local gaming, but they'll do cloud gaming, so that's going to be their play.
I think it's fair to say whatever a Chrome OS device can do, Windows 10X will be able to do, because that's how they compete, right? Except of course Windows has the benefit of being Windows, so you can run those Win32 programs. You won't be able to run the sort of graphically intensive stuff, but that's not Windows. That's not what Windows 10X is designed for anyway, so that shouldn't be a problem. But yeah, I've also sort of clarify. A few people sort of took this as Windows 10X would be launching as an update. You will be able to just download it on your existing devices. As far as I'm aware, that is not the case. Windows 10X will, even though it's on single screen devices, will still only be something you can acquire by buying new hardware. It will never be released as an update to existing Windows 10 users. And as far as I'm aware, you won't be able to just go out and buy a Windows 10X license to install on your existing hardware. Even if it's a clean install that sort of wipes your existing Windows 10 installation. I do not think that's going to be possible, if only because the way Windows 10X as an OS is built, it's different from Windows 10. Windows 10, the sort of OS image is very universal. It can install with no drivers technically, or very basic drivers rather. Windows 10X requires the OS image to be customized specifically for that device. So, I mean, technically you could edit it and slipstream drivers and stuff, but I don't think you'll be able to do it officially. I don't think there'll be like an ISO tool or anything to just install 10X. You'll have to get FFUs to flash onto the specific device and stuff. But that's a conversation for another time. So that's basically the Windows 10X news. I'm still very excited about Windows 10X. I've said this for a while now. I think Microsoft is hoping for Windows 10X to be the future of Windows as a whole. That's a long journey. They're starting at 0 with Windows 10X. Like I said, it's not coming as an update, so they don't just get 1 billion users on day one. They have to eat into their own market share to ensure Windows 10X is a success. But that's going to be a long while, 5 years, 10 years. So we're in for the long haul here for Windows 10X. But like I said, I'm very excited about it. And legacy Windows 10 is dead to me.
Yeah. Someone's bringing up that Windows 10X cannot run Android apps. Chrome OS can. All right, first of all.
That is not a selling point.
Yeah. Have you tried? I feel like a lot of people say this stuff because they read it. They don't have a Chromebook. I have a Chromebook. I have a nice Samsung one. It's right down here. I can actually see it right there. I do occasionally use it. Yeah, on the floor, of course. I'm on a standing desk right now. So what do you want? I'm taller than most things. Running Android apps on Chrome OS, not all apps can. I forgot if I can even install Edge. I don't even know if Edge works. You can't install all apps. 2, they're not very good. Most apps are not built for scaling on Android, or Chrome OS rather. They have problems with scaling up and access and all this kind of stuff. It's better than nothing, and I think it was smart that Google added that. But the idea that this is like similar to even UWP apps in terms of how they scale and operate is hilarious to me. That said, Windows 10X, I don't see why you couldn't run, I don't know, BlueStacks. Like BlueStacks is just another executable Win32. You can run that Windows 10X. And then you can run your silly Android apps within Windows 10X. And I mean, you could do this right now in any Windows 10 device. I don't get if running Android apps is a selling point for you, go down on BlueStacks, be one of the 10 people that actually regularly use that thing, and go at it. Have fun running your Android apps on PC. I don't think this is a big selling point, though, for Chrome OS or going to be for Windows 10X, though.
Yeah. So that's basically it for the Windows 10X news. I'm glad Panos confirmed this because this has been on the rumor mill for a few weeks now. I'm enjoying this, dare I say, transparency regarding this. I admittedly they did sort of dodge the real reasons as to why they're making this strategy and made it sound like, oh, we're so amazing, we can just pivot to single screens and just make it all work and we're going to be great, as if they haven't been working on this since the very beginning. Whatever. But I'm glad that they confirmed that this is actually the plan now. as long as they keep us updated on this, this can't be the only update, and then they don't talk about it again until spring next year. They should talk about this again at Build. They should talk about this again whenever they do another hardware event. Just keep us updated on the ongoing with 10X, because this is a new version of Windows. This is a huge deal. It's like that they can't just talk about it once and then bury it for a year and a half. They can't. They need to keep people updated. They keep release insider preview builds. Just keep the community in check. Because I think that's going to be very important for Windows 10X.
I'm also, I have to say, I feel way more happier and confident with Panos kind of leading a lot of this.
Me too, yeah.
Because I mean, clearly he's got an idea for hardware and engineering, but also seems like he knows how to pick the right teams and people, and he just seems to be really receptive to the current, trends in design and what people want and all this kind of stuff. And I think it's going to be we'll have to wait and see. Who knows? Maybe he's really terrible at operating systems, but I feel actually pretty confident in this. I think it's actually I think it's an interesting ride, and I don't know. I feel like this is a good move. So.
Yeah, I think Windows are going to have a very few interesting years with Panos in charge, because, like I said, Windows got kind of boring the last couple of years. And that was, I think, deliberate on Microsoft's behalf. Sort of Windows faded into the background. They were focused more on the software and services that sit on top of operating systems rather than the operating systems themselves. But I think we're slowly going back to focusing on the operating system here. And I think rightly so. An operating system is still important, in my opinion. Yes, the job of an OS is to fade into the background, but at least make the OS good. Windows 10 Windows 10 was fine, but it could be better, I think, and Windows 10 X is on that path.
Yeah, Windows 10 is the problem. Windows 10 is it's, as people are pointing out comments, it's 30 years old. Like, yeah. I mean, it looks new, but there's a lot of underlying tech there.
It looks new in some places and old in others.
But it's really hard to go through and update everything while it's still a live operating system. 10X is built from the ground up. There was no pressure, to meet consumer, demands right now. They can build it in kind of secret for a long time, and that's a different thing. And Apple's going to go through this right now. That's why iOS is now morphing to iPad OS, which is trying to morph into, let's be honest, a Mac OS, at least a new version of Mac OS that'll be built for light computing devices. That's the goal there. There'll still be Mac OS for the pro stuff, but that's what they're trying to solve too. This idea of operating systems is a really interesting one. So Windows 10, though, of course, will always be around for all these other uses. But this is good. This is the way I think things should be progressing. So, yeah, hopefully you're right that we'll hear more in the coming weeks and months on this. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. What we're going to talk about now, let's talk about the Xbox Series X events. Do you want to summarize some of this? What happens?
Yeah, so this event, Microsoft sort of announced, I think last week or the week before, that they've announced monthly events. So every month they're going to do some sort of Xbox Insider event. And this month's was about third-party games. And they sort of hyped this up as, hey, this is our first look at all of these awesome games that are going to be launching on Xbox Series X. And, you're going to see gameplay and all of this stuff. And when the event came and went, and I didn't actually watch the event, but I saw loads of people talking about it on Twitter. And it's fair to say, I think a lot of people were disappointed in the event. And I was very curious to see what, to find out why. And digging around a little bit, apparently the event itself was, although there were games that they did announce, lots of games coming to Series X and stuff, none of them were AAA titles. Many of them were sort of AA or indie sort of stuff, which is fine. That's not a bad thing. It's just, I think Microsoft hyped this up in the wrong way. I think they were expecting sort of medium to sort of big game announcements, and they weren't really here. Not only that, Microsoft sort of touted gameplay as a core part of this event, and there wasn't much gameplay. Most of the trailers were CGI based, and that's not very good if you're trying to look to see how Series X performs and how games look, because if you're rolling out CGI trailers, that's not an indication of what the game's going to look like on the actual console. So a lot of gamers were disappointed in this event. Our Xbox editor Jez Corden wrote up an editorial on this. It's sort of, the TLDR is it wasn't bad, but the event was far from the bombastic and polished ones gamers are used to. And I think this is the first one of these sort of monthly events. Right. So they're going to get better at this. This was day one. And remember, a lot of them are still at home doing this from their own homes and stuff. So they're using their own, 1080p webcams and poor microphones. And that can, make the event feel low budget. But this is how it's going to be for a while, I think. So we just all have to get used to that.
Yeah, I think the someone pointed out they didn't manage expectations. I think what happened was in the announcement they actually said gameplay, trailers, and previews. They actually mentioned all the stuff they were going to show, but everybody focused on gameplay. And that's how I saw people retweet. Oh, they're going to show off actual gameplay, the Xbox Series X. And that's what became sort of the focus. And they did show some gameplay, but it definitely wasn't, like I think some of us were expecting to see maybe even actually people with actual controllers actually playing the game and then like zoom in and like actual show, a match or someone playing a level, right? With a frame counter and all this. Like they could have done that, which would have, I think, met the expectations of what people were hoping. Because that said, like, I mean, again, it's not that big of a deal because when compared to PlayStation 5, Microsoft is still well ahead of where Sony is and, telling us what this device is capable of. We know what it looks like, for instance. And now we've actually seen some of these games. And I have to admit, most of the games actually looked really intriguing. There was definitely this theme. Everything is very future, post-apocalyptic, dystopian future stuff. And it was all very I crack up at it because the big game right now in the world, of course, is Nintendo's Animal Crossing, which I still haven't bought, and I'm actually pretty proud of myself. I think it's just not for me. I don't think I can play that game. But Animal Crossing is very much this actually, I would say Animal Crossing is dystopian, but it's just done with cute characters. This idea of working for a raccoon who exploits your labor and everything that doesn't seem to me very escapism. But that's such a, Nintendo is such a cute, family-friendly thing. And you watch all these trailers, and it's just like they had that one, it begins with the C. Now I forgot the name of it. It was like the horror game. It looked very much like H.R. Geiger stuff out of Aliens. Like it looked like, I thought it was like H.R. Geiger, the video game. But everything looked very dark and creepy, and it's just like, all right, this is the thing. But I thought the games looked great. But it's hard until we see this stuff in action and play it ourselves. It's all sort of esoteric and in our heads. It's like even conveying what 4K gaming is. It's like, okay, you can kind of get it, but I play 4K games, but after a while, you just lose sight of the fact you're playing a 4K game, right? Mm-hmm. Just because you get immersed in the story, which is what actually matters. So.
So as I mentioned, most of the games announced are sort of indie titles you've not heard of before, so I won't name them all. You can go and check it out online if you're curious at what they did announce. The biggest sort of announcements I think that most people would sort of recognize, Madden 21 will be a game that you can run on Xbox Series X, although EA's doing a weird thing. So EA isn't using its own... EA isn't using Microsoft's cross-device thing, which makes a game compatible with both Xbox One and Xbox Series X. You will be able to get a Series X version of Madden 21 for free, but by a certain date. If you order the Xbox One version or pre-order it before it launches, I think, or before the end of the year, you will get a code to then download an Xbox Series X version, which will be valid up until March 31st next year. So that's not the same as what Microsoft's system is, which is a game developer can build one game, and just like on a PC, if you run it on Xbox One, the graphics will be lowered a little bit. If you run it on Series X, it'll be full blast, 4K 60 or whatever. That's not what EA is doing for some reason. But yes, Madden 21. There's also... where is it here? We have Assassin's Creed Valhalla. That's the next Assassin's Creed installment. Assassin's Creed, obviously, a huge game franchise. Been around a very long time. And there was Dirt 5. I'm actually a huge fan of Dirt. I think Dirt's a really fun game. And, of course, that will be launching on Xbox Series X as well with 4K 60 FPS support. But apparently it also has 120 FPS support as well. So I'm going to be very interested to try that out. I guess, do you need a 120 hertz refresh rate display to take advantage of 128 frames? You do, don't you? I figured as much. Yeah. So nobody's going to take advantage of that.
No, that's not true. I mean, a lot of TVs do 120.
Oh, they do?
Now.
Okay.
Yeah. And you have like a game mode a lot of times you have to put on, stuff like that. But yeah, a lot of TVs have the 120. I think there's even 240 out there, but those are really rare and expensive. But yeah, 120 is definitely possible. You can do that.
Yeah. So do the LG OLEDs have it? Because that's what I've got.
See, yeah, I forgot, because then it gets into this whole thing with the refresh rates, but the refresh, there's the refresh rate, then there's the pixel refresh rate, which in the latency there, 1 millisecond, all this, so it gets pretty complicated. Yeah, something I'm sure we'll do some buyer's guides on the best 120 hertz TVs.
So that was this month's event. Like I said, Xbox are going to be doing monthly Xbox Insider events. So next month's is all about the platform. Now, this is what many of us are sort of theorizing / expecting. This is where Microsoft will announce Xbox Lockhart, which is the sort of cheaper Series X, probably going to be called the Series S. It's apparently a 4 teraflop console. It should be able to do some 4K gaming. Perhaps it'll look more like a set-top box rather than this sort of tower PC thing that the Series X looks like. And maybe we'll even get pricing in June. If the event's all about the platform, they're going to be talking about services, including Game Pass, I imagine, but also the platform, the consoles where the platform runs on. So hopefully we'll get more information on the Series X and indeed Lockhart in June. And then July will be all about first-party games. So that's Halo Infinite, which is the only game I'm interested in so far, and is the reason why I didn't tune into this month's event, because I knew Infinite wasn't there.
Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah. Something's cool. I'll wait till it goes on sale. That's when I get excited. Yeah, it's hard for me to get like really hyped for this stuff. We talked about that earlier this week, you, me, and Jez, but I hate watching trailers for games that come out like a year from now. Drives me nuts.
Because it makes you really got to wait. Because that was me with Halo Infinite. They announced Halo Infinite.
I'd rather not know.
Yeah, they announced Halo Infinite in 2018, I want to say. I think it was. It's been so long, and I'm still waiting. It makes me sad.
I'd rather not know. I'd rather get the experience of like when it's like 6 weeks from launch and the hype starts building, the ads are running, like, oh, it's coming out. All right, now I'm interested. Then I'll start reading the reviews and all this. But once a year out, man, the way things are going now, who knows if we're all live in here. I don't want to think about that stuff.
The best game announcements are the ones that are the trailer rolls and then the end of the trailer says available now. It's like, yes, go down and play it today. So whenever they do a trailer and it's like coming in 2 years, I say to myself every single time, I'm probably going to be dead. Something's going to happen to me and I won't make it to play this game and I'm going to be really sad about it.
I'm just happy I saw all 9 Star Wars episodes. As a child, grew up in the 80s. I mean, I never thought that would happen. Like, I'm just like, okay. And was it worth it? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, that's enough of when Xbox Series X. So yeah, it'll be a lot. I do like Microsoft's approach here, of course, at this idea of like every couple of weeks, just more information coming out. It's they have this idea. They do it all the time, and they do it. We've been seeing it with Windows 10X too. This idea of they don't just announce something and then drop it for 6 months. They have a rolling PR kind of that keeps it in the mindset. Every couple months something comes up. Even with the Surface hardware, you start to see these bumps and stuff like that. So I do like this approach as I think it keeps things fresh. And yeah, we still got to wait for to see how Sony, kind of answers all this stuff. So anywho, let's go to the Surface Duo emulator. So I've never even installed this thing, but you've been playing with it for a while. It did get updated this week. So this is for developers to start building apps with, but it gives us also a sneak peek of what it's like to run Android on a dual screen hardware, specifically the Surface Duo, which is getting closer to release. So what changed this week? And I know you said something about how it's really started to feel really polished now. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so obviously when the original Surface Duo emulator image came out, I think back in February or January, it was an earlier build of Surface Duo's OS, which is Android 10, but it's customized specifically for Surface Duo. Animations weren't working, like the ability to span things and move things across displays it didn't work all the time, very laggy. Also, just behaviors didn't work as entirely as expected. This week's emulator image, well, still not done. There are still animation lag and behaviors a bit iffy here and there. We are getting there. This is definitely on the track to being done soon-ish. This week's emulator build has a number of new features and fixes. I'll just list them off here. Support for using a keyboard in all postures and flip modes, app drawer and app search support, improved notification support, improved settings and quick setting experiences to support dual screens, enhanced camera experience, which I've tried to look at. The camera app is still just the default AOSP one. It's not Microsoft's own one yet.
Is that PureView?
Yeah, no. And then several platform improvements to better support app compats around rotation, resizing, full screen, and Spanish scenarios. So that last one's interesting because I've been talking to quite a few people at Microsoft who are dogfooding Surface Duo hardware, and one of the complaints most of them have is that the device isn't very good at determining which screen apps should be opening on. You'll tap on an icon, it'll open the other screen, or if you try to use it just in single screen mode, a lot of the time the app will be open on the screen you're not looking at and stuff. So they've been trying to sort of figure the algorithm and work that, because I guess that sort of stuff works in conjunction with like the gyroscope and just double tapping on the screen to indicate you're using that screen. So they need to sort of tweak and tune it, and by the sounds of it, in this build they have better support for that. But yeah, just using I posted a video on Twitter earlier today of just sort of going through the motions of it, opening an app, spanning it, clicking on a link, having that app shift over to have the other app open on one display, scrolling on that app whilst looking at something else in the other app. You can do drag and drop now. That's supported within apps, so I was able to highlight some text in Edge, open up Microsoft Word, and then drag that text from Edge to Word and have that just pop in like you would expect. So instead of having to sort of highlight the text, press and hold, select copy, then tap on the indicator in Word, and then press and hold, and then paste, I could just drag and drop. And you'll be able to do that in OneDrive as well, most of the Office apps, Microsoft Edge, of course, OneNote, and I imagine plenty of other apps that add support for drag and drop in the future. But yeah, I just wanted to highlight it because this is getting good now. It's really coming along, I think, and it's another indication that Surface Duo will be launching earlier than holiday 2020. Again, it's not done. There's still work to be done, but it's come a long way since January, and I'm pretty positive about it. Every time I try the emulator, I use it and I set up the home screen and stuff, and I'm like, man, I can't wait to use this thing, because like having the two home screens and customizing it, it's fun. It's a fun operating system to use. The whole dual screen idea, I think, is going to be really interesting. And I've said this before. I think it makes more sense on a phone than it does on a PC. The dual screen stuff. But yeah.
How's the tap to pay work?
Well, so yeah, what Dan's mentioning there is, we've talked about this before on the podcast, I think. We're hearing Surface Duo won't have tap to pay, it won't have wireless charging, and it won't have 5G support. So that's sort of three key features that it's got to be missing out on with Gen 1. And for the wireless charging one, listen, that's a big deal to me personally. I think most people will be fine with not having wireless charging. The NFC one, I think most people in the US aren't going to care too much about NFC, but everywhere else are going to be like, how can this not have NFC? Like in Europe, for example, at least in the UK, everybody uses tap to pay. Like tap to pay is the way you pay for things when you're out and about. You don't use a card or cash. You use tap to pay. Surface Duo not having that is going to be a big killer for a lot of people outside the US. And no 5G, I think no one cares about no 5G. I think that's fine, especially if it improves battery life, which we are hearing that the battery size on Surface Duo isn't tiny. I was expecting it to be smaller than what we've been told it is. So hopefully we can talk more about this soon. I'm still trying to get some final details on the specs, but I'm planning to do a write-up on all the specs I've heard about for Surface Duo in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting experience. I'm definitely looking to see if the Duo fits into my life and makes anything easier or harder to use. I'm very excited about messaging on it, in the sense of using it in landscape mode and using the full keyboard, sort of like an old Sidekick. Like for me, I still just really love, if I'm having a conversation with someone live chatting, like that style is super cool. But who knows with the size of the device and how it fits in your hands, if it's comfortable, it's ideal for that, right? These are like questions that will have to be sort of answered. But that format, that positioning is also going to be cool because of game streaming, because now you can do virtual. We know there's going to be like this idea of virtual controls, and you can stream your Xbox games to it. Like that's I think a much more interesting way of gaming, because right now, like, I got some really high-end phones here. I have a lot of Huawei stuff, and I have some Samsung things, and they can do mobile gaming, but I played more mobile games on my Windows phone years ago than I do today on Android phones. I don't know. I just never caught on to me. I just don't kind of like the way the on-screen controls, and this to me may be enough to get me push into that. So it'll be interesting even as a gaming kind of device. Yeah, it won't push, there are like literal gaming phones now that will crush it in terms of actual performance. But what I'm talking about for actual just engagement, stuff like that. So we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully sooner than later. Nothing this week, of course, was announced regarding Surface Duo and availability, but maybe in the coming weeks we'll hear more about that. And I guess that segues nicely into Surface hardware news. Now, We'll try to keep this kind of brief because we already did 2 hours on Wednesday, which you guys can go rewatch. We answered a lot of questions there as well. But Surface Go 2, Surface Book 3, Surface earbuds, which I'm wearing, not using the mic though, just using it for audio. And of course, Surface headphones 2, which I have right here. And I've finally been using these. There's a lot of small differences, by the way. We'll start with these just because I'm holding them. A lot of small differences that I've been noticing. Of course, they're in black now. Zach asked, do they pick up fingerprints? They don't. They're very nice in that regard. They just don't pick up fingerprints. So they're going to stay matte black and not look gross. But they did some small changes. All the button layouts, all that are exactly the same. But the power button is now more prominent. Before it was sort of almost flush with the device, and you had to like kind of feel and press down.
I almost always press the mute button first before I find the actual correct button on the Surface Headphones 1.
Yeah, and now it's more prominent. You can actually feel it like sticking out. It feels way better, and it is much easier to grip. And same thing with the mute button. And the mute button's shaped differently. It's pill shaped, so it feels differently. And they didn't change too much. The padding on the top, for those wondering, is exactly the same. I still find them very comfortable. One of the cool things now is the headphones rotate 180 degrees. Last time they would only go one direction like that. But now they can flip the other way. So when you're wearing them, they can around your neck, it's more comfortable. They are Bluetooth 5. They have aptX support. The audio quality is very good on them. I've always liked the sound profile of these. I think they still sound very good. They do get now 20 hours of battery life. I need to qualify that. We're going to use aptX. It plainly states it will use more battery, and indeed the estimate drops down to 17 hours. Still think that's very good. That is an increase of at least 3 to 4 hours more than a previous generation with aptX. And if you turn aptX off, it's actually around 5 hours more. Lots of questions people have on this. The one I hear the most, can you wear them with noise canceling and be charging them, plugging them in USB? Yes, you can. It doesn't disable it. And that's a weird question, but it's only because the Sonys don't do this. The Sonys, for all their quality, have two really big things that make them. I don't, and I have them, but I don't prefer them. One, they don't multi-pair. So they single pair with the device, and that's it. It makes using it between your PC and your phone trouble. It means you need to physically disconnect and redo it. It's an extra step, where this you can be multi-paired. I think it's at least 2 devices, but Surface Headphones Gen 1 could do 8 devices. So I'm going to find out hopefully today. The other thing is with the Sony headphones, if you're wearing them and you want to charge them or plug them into your PC, it disables. These don't do that. You can use the active noise canceling. You can use the audio and still have it plugged into your PC or phone, bank, whatever charger, and charge them while you're using them. They've been very good so far. The audio quality is great. I'll have to do a little more testing, switching between devices and all this kind of stuff. I'm one of those people, I'm not super sensitive to, like, I don't know. I think it's a little hard for me to hear aptX on and off. I just know it's theoretically better for streaming quality and performance, but I'll have to do a little bit more testing. Those also dropped in price, and that's not as big of news because they've been on sale already at the lower price for a long time. But we have to remember Surface headphones launched at $350, which is basically what the Bose go for. Now they're down to $250 at the new price point. Which is way more competitive, and I actually think at $250 is actually a pretty good value. They are optimized for basically office and voice use. That is, the active noise canceling works best for those situations. It works on airplanes, but they've really tuned them for wearing this in everyday urban life, basically. But for me, what makes the Surface headphones in the sequel here just good is the ergonomics. Again, this is just what Microsoft excels at. The dials, you have 2 dials on each side. One dial is volume up, volume down. The other dial is the level of the active noise canceling. And when you go to the other max, it actually amplifies the noise in the room. It's just, and then you double tap to basically control audio playing and stuff like that. The ergonomics are just the best on all the headphones. I have the Bose, I have the Sonys, and the audio quality on those are really good. Actually, I would say the Bose don't have the best audio quality. I haven't tried the brand new ones, but the QC35 2s, it's okay. But But here, just using these, just turning up the volume and all that, it's so much cooler to use. Yeah, I think they look way better in black as well. They don't look as big and kind of goofy. I'll put them on for you guys if you want to see me model like them. Now I'm doubling my Surface headphones. But you can kind of see how they look. I mean, they're you may think they look big, but I have the Bose and the Sonys, and they all kind of look kind of like this. Actually, the biggest ones I have are razors, the ones that vibrate. Those things look like giant cans. But I find them really, really good. And I think for the price, they're awesome. They also do auto pause when you take them off your neck, which is nice. And they do all that cool stuff. New app launched today that controls them, firmware, equalizer, app decks, and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, so that's those. They also have a black case now, which is really cool. You do get your cables with them. I think there's actually two cables. There's the 3.5 millimeter headphone wire, so you can use them wired if you want to. And then there's a USB to Type-C cable for charging or connecting up to your PC. Someone asked, I got to confirm. I'm pretty sure there's no Type-C audio. I think you need a separate chip, I think, for it to happen. But you do get they do charge by Type-C and fast charge. Very good. That's basically the review right there. So.
Real quick before we move on, regarding that Surface audio app, one of the questions we've been getting a lot is around the Cortana support and the integration with that. The Surface audio app has launched. However, as far as I'm aware, that there is no option to set a default assistant within it yet. And that Microsoft said to us back in October that there would be an option inside the app to choose between Siri or Google Assistant or Cortana or Bixby or whatever. You could choose your assistant within the app. So when you tap and hold, it initiates that assistant you've set. When you set up the headphones or the earbuds, it's no longer Cortana, right? It's just a generic AI voice. It's not Cortana.
It's hard to say. It's similar. I don't think it's Jen. What's her name?
Jen Taylor.
That does the Cortana voice. Jen Taylor. Yeah, I don't think so, but it sounds familiar. I'll say the audio for like the setup is super pleasant and enjoyable. They did a really nice job. It's very much reminds me, and very few people can relate to this, but when you set up HoloLens, HoloLens has actually amazing audio. A lot of people probably don't realize that, but the speakers on it are really cool and they sound amazing. And the audio experience sounds very similar to this.
So yeah, real quick on the digital assistant side, what I think we're going to see here is what they said back in October. That's changed, and all this is whatever assistant you have set as default, when you tap and hold, that's what will be initiated. So if you have Google Assistant set as default on your phone, which most Android phones do, when you tap and hold, it will just initiate Google Assistant. It won't be something you configure via the Surface audio app. It will just be decided by the Android OS itself and whatever you've got set as default there. When you tap and hold, does it on your phone? Does it open? You said it opens Bixby right now, right?
Yeah. Actually, I haven't tried the headphones, but yeah, the earbuds opens Bixby on my Samsung phone, which is kind of funny. Even if I set Google as my assistant in the settings, which could be bugged. So I'm going to try to talk to Microsoft today about that to get some clarification.
Yeah. So that's the headphones, the earbuds as well, of course. Which I think the earbuds are the most exciting thing that launched for me.
Yeah, so obviously I'm wearing them right now. What the beauty of them is I know people think they're funny from the side. I don't think they're that goofy looking, but especially compared to AirPods. I think it's one of those things as it's all about acclimation. Like I talked to a lot of people today. AirPods to them don't look weird. It's only because everybody wears them. So it's what I call a collective delusion. When they first came out, everybody made fun of them, but now so many people wear them, it doesn't seem as goofy because it's like Uggs and bell bottoms. Like if you were to go wear bell bottoms into like an office meeting today, people would think you're weird looking. But there was a period in our history where bell bottoms were popular, and they try to bring them back. There is a period where people wear Uggs, or they wear those stupid rubber shoes. I forgot what they're called. But like, I'm just saying, like, if you look at fashion, what's acceptable and why you don't wear certain things now today, but like, for instance, I'm not wearing like a V-neck t-shirt right now, right? It's not very formal. But let's say if you start watching TV news every night, everybody was wearing V-neck t-shirts. all of a sudden you would start wearing a V-neck and wouldn't be weird anymore, right? So this idea of like stuff looks funny to me is like really super relative and subjective. And I think the more people see this, they're going to be like, that's not as weird. But the beauty of them is, if you notice when I look straight onto the camera, is the slim profile of these. Like it's really hard. You don't notice them nearly as much. I think that's partly by design because these are meant for office use and being on a Teams meeting or using a Skype call. And when you're thinking about that, like, and you're looking at me, you don't see like little drain pipes shooting out of my ears or little cigarette butts. Or, even my Bose buds that I wear, the Sound Sport Freeze, and I love them things. But when I wear those, I look like I have second ears sticking out because they're stick out so far. But whatever, I don't care how I look at the gym because I'm not really trying to impress people with my cool earbuds. I'm trying to exercise and have really good audio, and they happen to be very comfortable and stay in. So my point is, I don't know, I find these almost kind of generic looking, like so whatever. In terms of comfort, these are stupid comfortable. Like I've been wearing these now for probably an hour and a half. I've worn them for up to 4 hours. You do not get any fatigue in your ears because they're so light and they don't bounce around. And, I can shake my head. I've never had them fall out. I've never had them feel like they're going to fall out. I haven't run with them yet. I'm very confident that I can run with these. They're not going to fall out. Like they're just in there. Like they're in there. And not in the ear canal. That's the important thing. They just naturally kind of cling to the inside of your ear cartilage. They're like holding on, but they're just between that and the weights. This is how light they are. The other night I wore them for like 4 hours. I took them out. Like an hour later, I thought I still had them in. Like you ever get like phantom vibrations? Everybody has had this feeling in their phone, in their pocket. You get a lot of notifications. Like you get a phantom vibration. You're like, wait, did my phone just vibrate? And you're like, oh, I don't have my phone with me, or didn't vibrate. That feeling I've had with these, where like I couldn't tell without touching my ear if they were there, and that's really impressive for me because these are meant for a different demographic than AirPods or even the Samsung earbuds or the new Google ones, which are very much more consumer generic. You put them in, you're going to work, that kind of thing. These are really meant for that, but to wear them at work all day. You're in front of your computer, you're synced up to your computer, you're also synced up to your phone because they multi-pair, of course. You can take calls from your phone with ease. You can take a Skype call or a Teams meeting. You can listen to music and watch video. And you could just wear them for hours. And if someone comes up to you in the office and wants to talk to you, you don't need to pop them out because there's no noise canceling. And I actually like that. I wouldn't mind if they came out with like a pro version that did have it, but I'm glad these don't go in your ear canal, have passive noise blocking or active, because I like being able to just wear these without feel like I'm losing the environmental audio. If you want that, then get these. These are very good at doing that. That's why they physically go over your ear and they have active and passive noise canceling going on. But if you don't want that and you like being able to walk around the office and being able to hear what's going on while also interacting with all your gadgets, these things are awesome for that. And I think that's a really interesting market that some of these other earbuds aren't meeting. Now, is that a huge mass market? Probably not, but I think this is where Microsoft excels in, is this idea of like productivity tools that help you. But these are something you can like put them on in the morning and wear them all day. 8 hours of battery life, right? So that's a long thing. And then you get the little case here that they come with. This case holds 2 extra charges in it. So you just plop it open and it's got a little LED light on there and stuff like that. You drop in the headphones. And you can get up to 24 hours of charge on this thing. It's got a Type-C charger, no wireless charging, which is a bummer, but Type-C charge. So you get up to 24 hours on a single charge with this. And so that's like 3 days of work, right? And that's, I don't know, it's clever. It's a nice small case too. It's very well built. It's all very delightful. The audio quality is very good with these. I haven't tried the other buds. I actually want to get the new Google ones, but they don't even ship for like 3 weeks. So it's going to be a little difficult for me to directly compare those. I don't have Samsungs. I do have access to AirPods, so I'll probably try those. The pairing is good. It's okay. The pairing is almost out of Microsoft's hands. They can handle a little bit of it, but this defaults to just Bluetooth, right? And Bluetooth is still Bluetooth. So like you still get weird kind of connections, and sometimes you may have pairing problems. I haven't really had many issues here, but it is at the end of the day Bluetooth. And I say that because Apple does a little bit of proprietary stuff with their own chip and the chip in the phones, and it just works so well together. That magic isn't quite here, but that's, Apple's. That's the reason why everybody accepts how weird AirPods work. But I'm very happy with these. And some questions people have. So there is no active noise canceling. There's none. Like, if anything, I would say you can hear your noise is about reduced. You have about 95% access to your environmental noise around you versus not having them in. That might even be like 97%. Like, you can hear stuff around you. So that's passive noise canceling, sorry, and there's no active noise canceling. There's no microphone in there buzzing audio to counteract the sound waves. Can you wear these while laying down in bed with your head on the pillow? I've had this question a few times. I find that weird because I would never do that. But yes, you can. Because they're so flat and they're so flush and they're very light. Yes, I was able to put my head on a pillow, lay down on the side, listen to my podcast or a phone, and it wasn't uncomfortable at all. Like, I was like, oh, I could definitely do this for, I don't know, half hour, fall asleep with them in. And they didn't like fall out either. They just stayed in. So I guess you can do that. I can't vouch for everybody. You all have different weird thresholds for what's comfortable and all that. But my first, experience of that was it's fine. They do have, I'll pull them out here. You can kind of see these little, I know it's a little overexposed there in the lights, but this pops off. You get 3 different ear sizes. These are the mediums by default. But if it's too big, you can try the smalls. If you need the large, you can do that as well. So that all comes in the box. You get the little charger. You get a Type-C cable with it. 24 hours of charging. They work with the app. They already had a firmware update. I don't know what changed. We are expecting, Microsoft has no official position on the darker color. But I think it's safe to assume that they probably are still coming at some point, but they're in a glacier white right now. I don't know. I know a lot of experience with other earbuds, which is both good and bad, because it's going to make my review a little bit tougher because can't compare to everything. But it also makes it interesting because I think a lot of people who've never had earbuds or thought about wearing them all day, this is an interesting thing. And I'm very pleased with them. I'll just say that. There is one issue, and I was telling you about this, and I don't know if it's because I think these are Bluetooth 4.2. They're supposed to have aptX support. I'm not 100% on that. But there's like, if no audio is playing, there's like a slight like hissing you can kind of hear, like a background, like, and then like if you don't use like your phone for a few minutes, I can feel there's the Bluetooth LE, like the channel kind of closes to save battery life. But you can kind of hear that. And so if you're jumping between things, you'll hear this like kind of slight background hiss. And I don't know why that is. It's not huge, not but it is something I've noticed. So that may be the Bluetooth 4.2, that may be the LE. I don't really know. So, but that is Surface earbuds.
Did you mention the price cut?
Right. Yeah. Very good point. So these were originally announced at $250. They are now $199, and I think that's a fair price.
Yeah.
It is still $20 more than Google. That's something to be, take into consideration. I don't know if there could be. They do get 3 hours more battery life than the Google ones. They are IPX4 rated, so if you sweat or get rain on them, they'll be fine. They have a lot of the same features. But the reason why, by the way, to mention why they're big circles, because
Dan just hung up. I guess the touch sensor works.
So as I just demoed, the touch gestures work. So these are touch gestures. If you double tap, apparently, it'll hang up the call. And that's exactly what happens. So, but that's why you can volume up as you swipe up, volume down, swipe down. You can skip tracks by forward and going backwards. So these are meant to be targets to touch. And to be honest, if they were much smaller, you'd be kind of sticking your finger in your ear. Like, they're meant to to do a swipe, you need at least a little bit of a runway to make that happen. And that's partly why they are, this size. So they're functional that way. But again, they're comfortable while you're wearing them that way. So you can just quickly change your volume. A lot of people are asking. So again, I'm not using the microphones right now. But let's see. I'm going to try to see if I can. Okay, I'm going to try to switch to the headphones. Let me know if you can. I have now switched to the headphones. Do you guys still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. This is a bad comparison, though, because you just went from a professional microphone to wireless earbuds. So they sound terrible, but we're not comparing them with other wireless earbuds. So this is a bad test, but this is what they sound like. So have a chat.
Yeah, so this is them on Skype using the microphones in here. Obviously comparing it to a $200 soundproofed microphone that is not even USB. I have the mic connector through an amplifier. Probably not very fair. I don't know how they sound on phone calls, but this is basically what they would kind of sound like on a Skype call. Yeah, so I don't know if there's more settings here. Yeah, I think I'm on the right ones. Now let's see if I can. Let's see.
Yeah, you're back.
And now.
So real quick, if you're listening to the podcast like the pre-recorded episode, I don't think you would have heard that. It would have just sounded the same. So yes, that wasn't the Surface earbuds. If you're listening to this on the on-demand version, that was just for the live audience on YouTube and Mixer.
Yeah, sorry, I can only do so many audio switching on my computer before I lose my mind. So Surface earbuds, I'm very happy with them. I think they're awesome. I think the concerns about its looks are subjective, and and by the way, I'm gonna be wearing these basically every podcast because I can do this now.
Wow,
it's nice having I can have. I don't like having the wired headsets, and I can keep both in.
You can walk over to your shelves and pick up a controller if you really want.
yes, I can just move around. It's nice. So I'm gonna be wearing these basically all for every podcast now. So you'll get used to them. But I'm happy. I think if you're already like leaning towards getting these, I'd say go for it. I think if you're part of that, everything I described, you want to wear them for hours at a time. You just want to put them in and forget you have them in, and be that kind of thing, situation. Then get them. Our managing our news editor, Dan Thorpe Lancaster, he's choosing between the headphones 2 and these, and it's a hard choice. I mean, there's no doubt the headphones 2 sound better. I mean, partly because it goes over the ear, they have bigger drivers, they have more bass to them. You get the both passive and active noise canceling. But like if I'm like sitting in front of the computer all day, like I can't wear these for like 4 hours. I mean, I've done it on the airplane, stuff like that, but I'm always kind of then shifting it because of the Apex thing.
You get sweaty ears and stuff after a while.
Yeah. And in the summertime, these are going to be hot. I mean, these are earmuffs.
And in black, they're going to be even hotter.
Yeah, if you're in the sun, that's true too. But these, I can wear these all day while I go to work. I could put these in my ears in the morning, go to work in front of the computer here, and I'd be totally happy. So if you can do that with your AirPods and okay, then I don't know if it's going to be much of a difference, but I don't know. I've heard mixed things with the AirPods in terms of comfort, and they fall out, and you bend over, and they can. These don't do that. These are, like I said, they're sticking to your ear. So, I think if you're
lots of people in the chat were saying the audio, the microphone audio sounded great compared to the AirPods and the Galaxy Buds Plus. They were on par, if not a bit better. So that's good news.
Oh. Very good. Yeah. Well, you guys are the first to hear it. I haven't heard it yet. So, but yeah, that's Surface earbuds. So, I'll have more of my review coming from Windows Central probably later next week. If you have questions, you can ping me on Twitter with them. I'll try to answer. But I'm definitely going through and trying all these little things. But I like them. So, Surface Book 3, not that exciting. I wrote an article about Surface Book 3 yesterday, talking about how people need to stop trying to make it something it's not. Surface Book 3 is Surface Book in general is a very unique device. There's nothing like it on the market. And I get some people want it because it looks cool and it is super nice. Like if I just give you just need like a powerful Ultrabook, it is that, and it's very satisfying to use. But Is it the most powerful laptop out there? Definitely not. And I know Microsoft's gotten a little trouble. I think, a couple of years ago, they did a lot of comparisons saying it was more powerful than a MacBook Pro. And that was true, actually. And that was partly because Apple was using older processors. And Microsoft always has sort of the advantage there. Plus, their GPU usually was faster than what is ever in a Mac. Mac, though, had the advantage of that their GPU and hardware was very much optimized for things like Final Cut, which, Final Cut would still be very fast on those systems. So it's hard to compare these things. But I think that did actually hold up. Now, if you look at the 2020 MacBook Pro, the 16-inch, the thing is, if you max it out, it's a pretty powerful laptop. I don't know if the new Surface Book 3 is more powerful than that. I also don't know if Microsoft is claiming it is either. I don't think they've really gone down that route. But yeah, I mean, the book, because they have to put almost everything behind the display, because the display disconnects and comes off. So behind that screen, you have a CPU, you do have a graphics a GPU, the Intel one at least. You have your RAM, and you have storage, and you have the motherboard, and you have battery. Like no one else has to do that behind the display. And the reason is because it's smarter and better engineering to put into the base of the computer. You have way more space, you have way more fans and larger heat pipes, and this is why you can put in larger chips. If you got to put this up behind the display, there's a lot of compromise. The benefit for Microsoft, though, is now that screen comes off, and literally no one else does that, right? And it's very expensive and hard to engineer, but there are limits, and you can't put in 45-watt chips into that. And even if you could, you just killed the battery life. That tablet already only gets like 90 minutes of battery life. If you put a 45-watt chip, you probably get like 30 minutes of battery life. So I know that bothers people, but that's, the best way to think of Surface Book is this. Surface Book is literally just a Surface Pro with a really good GPU attached to it. Like if you look at the Surface Pro and you're like, I wish this thing had an NVIDIA 1660 Ti. If you were to go engineer that, you would take that screen and you'd have to put a GPU into a base and give it a big battery and some fans and attach it. That's Surface Book. That's exactly all it is. And that's how you got to think about it. It's not really a gaming laptop. It's a laptop that can game. And I try to make the distinction all the time because it's crucial. Surface Book is a laptop that can game. It's not a gaming laptop. Because if you ever picked up or used a gaming laptop, you know what a gaming. I have one over there, the new Asus Rogue. That thing is a lot thicker. It's a little bit heavier. The fans get way louder. It gets way hotter. And it's kind of goofy looking. It's all plastic. That's a gaming laptop, right? And gaming laptops are built way differently than premium Ultrabooks and whatever the Surface Book is. And so keep that in mind. You can with the new graphics card, and I'm talking about the 15-inch here, 1660 Ti, you can do supposedly full HD gaming at 60 frames per second for pretty much all, titles. And that's actually really good. But yeah, so they got 10th gen Core i7 processors. These are the 15 watts with TDP higher up to 25 watts. So they do get more power out of them. But they are quad core. They're not 6 or octa core. They didn't use AMD. And I addressed that in the article. It would have been nice to have AMD. There's no doubt about it. But I think people have this in mind that, Microsoft, all they had to do was like drop in the AMD chip instead of the Intel one. Like it's a socket. And just like pop it in. You're like, there, it's an AMD system now. That's not how any of that works. It's not. They need to completely redesign the motherboard. All the wiring, they have to get different chipsets. The Wi-Fi, for instance, this has Wi-Fi 6. AMD has sometimes issues with doing Wi-Fi 6, and because you got to go with Intel. And so there's a lot of you have to redo the whole thing. Moreover, you usually have to redo the chassis and the thermal cooling and all that too. And you kind of can do that. We have seen laptops, the Surface Laptop 15 is an example of this. But when I spent time with AMD in Austin at their headquarters, and they have this thing called their AMD Assurance Program, and they have cooperative, what do they call it? I forgot the name of it now. They don't like it, basically, when manufacturers just swap out the chip. And, they still redo the board, but they basically build an Intel laptop, and then they swap out, put a different board in there that's all AMD. They don't like when companies do that because, as a lot of people point out, it's not really fair to AMD because you're not optimizing all the hardware. You're recycling and trying to get AMD in there, but you're not optimizing the hardware for them. And they'll argue, and I think they're right, that if you really want to make an AMD system shine, you build it from the ground up to be an AMD system, including all the thermals and the chipsets and all that. That's exactly what the Asus ROG Zephyrus G14 is. It's completely built. There's no Intel version of that. It's built around the concept of an AMD chip, and that's why it's so awesome, right? So the idea that they could have just dropped it, and maybe they could have done this, right? I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it was way more work than they wanted to do for this release, / it would not have necessarily optimized everything for AMD. That, and also, I'm not sure AMD can deliver the amount of chips they need right now for this market. This Intel chip is actually in mass production right now. It's actually easy to get. The AMD ones are just coming on this week, are just coming online to the market. And they're in small numbers. And you already had a lot of companies reserve them. So I think there's a lot of issues I'm saying that's going on here. Now, and that also plays into the whole redesign thing. I would have liked to have seen Surface Book 3 evolve. Zach and I are both in agreement here. It would have been nice to even have a larger trackpad or anti-glare display or an HDR display. These are things I've been arguing pretty publicly for a while now, and that didn't happen. Dell and Apple do the same thing. They do one design and they ride it for 3 to 5 years. That's because it's super expensive to make a Surface Book, right, to redesign it. And they don't sell a lot of Surface Books. Like, I'm sure they do all right, but they're not margin movers, right? The Surface Pro is that. Even Surface Laptop is that because it's a lower price point. It's what most people are looking for. And I feel like if they were selling millions of these things and they were super popular, they would sink more money into redesigning it every 2 years. But, even Surface Pro doesn't get redesigned every year. That's a big complaint there too. So I know a lot of people are going to say this is apologist. I'm just explaining the reasons behind this stuff. You don't have to hear it and be like, oh, I suddenly like Surface Book 3 now because Dan said all that. I'm just saying that's kind of the reality of it. 13, 15-inch versions, refreshed GPUs, refreshed CPUs, the fastest SSD they've ever used. I don't know what that means yet. I don't have it in front of me to test, but that's faster. They're also using, I believe, LPDDR4X RAM. It was DDR3 last time. So it's actually a big jump in performance and saves on battery life. Should get an extra half-hour battery. Listen, I think for what the Surface Book is and what's supposed to do, I think all this is going to make it that much better. I'm excited for a redesign, but at the same time, I'm not sure there's a lot of dramatic changes that need to be happening. But we'll see. There's also a Quadro version now. I just want to point out, this is for engineers, scientists, people who need Quadro graphics. Don't go buy the Quadro business version because you think it's going to be better than the GTX chips. It won't be. It's actually be worse for gaming, so don't do that. I do wish there were RTX graphics, kind of. I don't know. It's not a gaming laptop, so I kind of don't care. I guess Minecraft with RTX would have been kind of cool, but it doesn't have that. 15-inch still does have the Xbox wireless controller support, though, so there is that.
Yeah. There is one hardware change which I think is worth mentioning, and that's to do with the muscle wire lock system. They've improved it, they say. It's much faster and much quieter now. We haven't tested it yet. We don't. Dan hasn't got the Surface Book 3 in, but when that does arrive, of course, Dan will test it. Apparently, yeah, they updated that and made it faster and quieter. I don't know why nobody uses the detached system, but hey.
So that's interesting, though, because someone asked me that on Twitter last night, and I responded. And actually, a lot of people chimed in. And like one person said how, I think he works for a town, they bought 2,500 Surface Books.
Damn.
And they actually do use the tablet thing. Another person chimed in saying their auto dealer has them. And like when they drive in, like they have them disconnected and the person comes up to their car with just a tablet, takes down their info. So they're actually, I think this is one of those things where definitely you and me don't make use of it. Although I would also argue it's like the Surface Pro X with the pen hidden in the keyboard.
Yeah.
What I love about that design is I don't use pen very often. I really don't. But I love having it. And that's what I love about the Surface Pro X. It's because at one time I do need a pen. I just pull it out and it's right there. There's no trade-off in that. It was a little more expensive to buy. That was it, right? Surface Book is like, yeah, I rarely pop that screen off, but that one time I do it. It's so cool that I can do that, right?
And it's always a good demo as well. Whenever you're there in like a coffee shop and you pop it off, and goes, "Wow, you just pulled your screen off your laptop." Yes, I did.
Yeah, but I think there are professional uses, and this other group that's not as vocal. They're not on Twitter. They're not fanboys. They just use the products, and I think they probably are doing this stuff, and we're just not part of that group. And that's what I got from Twitter last night. There were a lot of people who were saying, "Oh no, we do use that stuff." So I don't know. It's a fair discussion about whether they should even have that design, right? But it is what it is. If you want, and this is why I argued in the article, I think what a lot of people want is not the Surface Book. Like, you want it because it looks cool and it's a nice laptop. What you really want, if you want more performance and like something like a Dell XPS 15 or a Razer Blade 15, you want a Surface Laptop Pro. That device doesn't exist yet. But that device, if I were to build one, it would be built from the ground up. It'd be thicker and heavier than a current Surface laptop, but it'd be built around the idea of 45-watt chips. AMD or Intel, have your pick. I don't care. I'm not choosing sides here. It would be built with that in mind. It would have the graphics, the thermal system would all be built around this idea of power. That's exactly what the Dell XPS 15 is, right? You built it from the ground up to be this powerhouse juggernaut. Now, Microsoft could absolutely make that laptop. That's not the Surface Book, though. And if you want what I just described, I'm sorry, Microsoft didn't make that laptop for you, and that's fine. Like, they made their laptop for a different audience, and that's okay. Maybe they'll make this other one, but stop trying to make the Surface Book into the Dell XPS 15 or the Razer Blade 15. Like, if you're telling me, like, I'm trying to choose between those two, to me, it's a weird thing, because do you really need the power of the XPS 15 then? Because if you're like, you need a 45-watt chip and a powerful GPU, then, and a long battery, then get the XPS 15. If you don't really need that, though, and you're okay with the power of the Surface Book, then, it's kind of a weird thing. So, but I don't know. Maybe we'll see that from Microsoft. I think that market, though, is already kind of saturated. But then again, they did do Surface laptops, so maybe they will do something like that. But that's a very different mission for Microsoft to have to do. Like I said, you have to build the laptop from the ground up to be that. You just can't force a Surface Book to become that as much as you'd want to. So sorry, people. What do you think about the Surface Book?
I mean, like, it's the design more the same. It's nice that they've updated the internals, of course, to bring it more current with other 2020 laptops. Yeah, it is a shame that they can't stick a 45-watt in there, but like you said, like, this is the only option. I think at this point it becomes a flaw with the overall design more than anything, right? Flaw is probably the wrong word, but the Surface Book made a choice when they, in regards to design and form factor. They could have done a 360-degree convertible, in which case they could then, sort of explore higher watt chips and whatnot, because they don't have to deal with like the PCI lanes and whatever else, and they have more room in the base and stuff. But they didn't. They decided to go with the Surface Book, which is the detachable, which is a unique design. As we mentioned on like the Wednesday stream we did, the Surface Book. One of the reasons why Microsoft can sort of get away with not updating the designs, because the Surface Book is still the only laptop that looks like the Surface Book. There's no one has copied this design. It's still you take the Surface Book into a coffee shop, you still have the most unique laptop there. Even though you got the Dell XPS with the ultra thin bezels, you got the MacBooks with whatever they've got going on. The Surface Book, I think, still catches the eye more than anything because of its just unique design, and when you close it, it has that sort of wedge shape and stuff. It is a unique laptop, so I think Microsoft can get away with not changing the design for one more time, but the next refresh, I think, needs to sort of change things up a bit.
Yeah, don't forget, I mean, the Surface Book, especially the 15, of course, and there's no other really, to give Microsoft even more credit here. If you look at the Surface Book 13-inch, there really aren't any 13 inches as powerful as it. That is actually pretty true.
Really? I didn't know that.
Well, you think about it. We're just joking, not joking about it, talking about the new Razer Blade Stealth. What makes the Blade Stealth so interesting is a 13-inch laptop that has a real GPU in it now. It has I believe it's the same GPU actually, 1650 maybe, 1660 Ti. I think it's the same GPU. That's the only other 13-inch though that has a discrete GPU, an NVIDIA GPU. No other 13 inches have that. And that matters too on the 13-inch MacBook Pro. Like, it's a powerful 13-inch. The 15-inch gets way more competitive because 15 inches, as I mentioned, do get the 45-watt chips. But then someone made the comment too. XPS 15 you can get with a Core i9, you can get with a GTX 1650 or whatever. Powerful, 64 gigs of RAM. Try gaming on it. Yeah, you can game. Is it going to run into thermal problems? Hell yes, it is going to run. It's not a gaming laptop. Again, it's a laptop you can game on, but would you buy the XPS 15 because you want to use it for gaming all the time? Ooh, that's a bad choice. Don't believe me. Go read all the forums because it's not meant to do that. So again, this is why we have gaming laptops, workstations, and then Surface Book. And Surface Book is built around this idea of a tablet, but also inking, right? There aren't very many 15-inch laptops that are as powerful with a GPU that also ink like the Surface Book does. And all that you may hear all that and be like, I'm not interested in any of that, Dan. And that's fine. That's totally fine. I get it. You don't have to love the Surface Book or the Surface Book 3. There are tons of other laptops that if you don't care about inking, you just want performance. And by the way, I point out also there's the Asus ROG mothership, which is what happens when you basically build a Surface Pro and you put in a desktop class GPU and a Core i9. It exists. Go buy it. It weighs 10 pounds and costs $6,500 and doesn't even do inking. But that's what happens if you get that dream device. Go buy a 10-pound PC and carry it around with you to class and brag about how it's the fastest, most powerful laptop out there. I mean, you can do that right now. But yeah, so that's my rant on the Surface. No one will. No one's going to buy that. Just like no one buys eGPUs.
Yeah.
I know everybody wants Thunderbolt 3 and eGPU. I know there's apparently 10 million of you that own eGPUs, and that's why you want it in Surface. None of you actually have bought an eGPU. And Jez plugged in an eGPU today and it crashed. I was like, yes. I know people think eGPUs are magic. Like, it's just like single cable. You plug it in and now it's yeah, in theory. In reality, eGPUs are just like everything else. They're problematic, and sometimes they do have driver issues. And Thunderbolt 3 is not a panacea for everything. They do have driver problems too. So, yeah, that's that. Anyway, let's get to the cool thing. We'll get to Zach's favorite.
Yay!
Here it is. Zach, you want to talk a little bit about it, and then I can fill in the news since I've talked so much already.
Sure. So Surface Go 2 was also announced this week. $399 starting still. The rumors were more or less bang on. Intel Pentium Gold 4425Y for the entry-level model. You can spec that with either 4 gigs or 8 gigs of RAM, 64 gig eMMC, or 128 gig SSD. But then you can also bump the CPU to an Intel Core M3 8100Y. That's an 8th gen chip, and that is with 8 gigs and 128 gig SSD. Or if you go for the commercial variant, you can get 256 gigs of storage as well. So if you want to spring out, I think it's $850 because that comes with LTE as well. That's a lot of money for a Surface Go, but again, that's the commercial side. The consumer Intel Core M3 model, the one with 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage, is $639, I believe. Still quite expensive. That's almost sort of Surface Pro territory. But I think that's by design, right? Because we're stepping up. The 399 Surface Go is an Intel Pentium Gold, which I personally think is fine for a lot of people for doing basic tasks, just browsing the web, checking email, writing in Word, or editing a PowerPoint document. The Intel Pentium Gold with 4 or 8 gigs of RAM, I think is fine. If you know your workflow, you should, make sure you do your research, but I think the Pentium Gold will be fine for a lot of people, especially kids. If you're if you're a parent buying a computer for your child, the 399 Surface Go I think is more than fine. Then of course you can step up with the Pentium Gold to the 8 gigs of RAM. I don't know if I recommend that one. That one's I think $549. Skip that one and then just plunge for the extra whatever it is, $70 for the M3 model at that point, because then you're getting a huge boost in performance. That turns the Surface Go into from being a PC companion, which is what many people referred to as the first Surface Go, to an actual PC, like a PC that people would be able to use as their only device. If you're somebody on the market looking for a PC, I would say the Intel Core M3 model with 8 gigs of RAM could be used as a primary PC. Has a larger display, 10.5 inches, with a resolution of 1920 by 1280. That's up 0.5 inches, and the resolution, the PPI, the density is 220, so slightly sharper screen, slightly more resolution there, slightly larger real estate, which should make using the Surface Go feel a little less cramped. One of the big complaints with Surface Go 1 was that using Windows 10, it felt cramped, buttons were really small and stuff. This 0.5 inches should make a bit of a difference there. But the overall size of the device has remained the same. So all the same type cover accessories and docks for the Surface Go 1 will work on Surface Go 2, which does mean the type cover itself is still very small. So if you were somebody who didn't like the size of the type cover 1, that hasn't changed, unfortunately. But that's basically the big changes for Surface Go 2. It has dual studio mics now, just like the other Surface devices, so much better audio quality on calls. A 5-megapixel front-facing camera, which Microsoft is touting as quite a big deal. As you know, right now we're on Video Call Central. But yeah, I am really excited about the Surface Go 2. I was a huge fan of the first Surface Go, and Microsoft has basically addressed every criticism that the first Surface Go had. Surface Go's big bezels, slow performance, and battery life were the 3 big complaints for Surface Go 1. Surface Go 2, bigger screen, thinner bezels, better performance, and technically increased battery life. Microsoft is touting 10 hours. I don't think you'll see 10 hours in this. The battery's only increased by 1, I can't remember the measurement now.
Watt.
1 watt, that's it.
1 watt.
So you're not getting too much more battery for this.
Which at least means they weren't like, it's not like the Surface Go 1 is full of empty space.
Right, yeah.
Just were like...
But yeah, that's basically it for the Surface Go 2. Oh, the other thing, the most important thing, of course, is there are now magnets in the top, so when you close the type cover, it doesn't flop around, which is nice.
Yes, they changed a little bit of the ordering of the function keys. Not a big deal, but they changed the keyboard light is compared to the other ones. Yeah, so they switched that around. Yeah, so I've got, for those curious, here in front of me, and reviews coming out soon. This is the Core M3 version with LTE. This is the big boy. Doesn't have the 256 storage, just 128, but this is the $630 version. And it's pretty great. I do enjoy using it more. It is still tiny. It is, 10.5-inch helps. The display is really good on it. It's still glossy. I'm still, no HDR. Oh, that's true. But, credit where credit's due. The viewing angles are outstanding. The color on it just pops. It's very sharp looking. I really enjoy the display. The keyboard's still small, but it's right at that threshold where this is a keyboard you can definitely get used to. And it's remarkably good keyboard considering how small it is. And the Surface Go just has a warm spot for a lot of people because it's such a tiny, cute computer. Like, people just love this idea of this little tiny thing. Even compared to the Pro X, it is a much lighter and smaller thing. Like, this is like you get a really tiny bag and carry this with you. And with the LTE, I talked about this on Wednesday, it's more useful because when I go outside, it's suddenly not a useless device anymore. I already posted the benchmarks for the Core M3. It's on Windows Central. Go see how it compares to the original Surface Go and other laptops. It compares favorably, I believe, to, I think the Surface Surface Pro 4 Core i5 is very similar to it in performance. So if you already have that, it's going to feel like it. But it makes a big difference in the performance. Now, I don't want to oversell it. The Core M3 is still, a dual core chip, and it's an old chip, and but by comparison to where the original Surface Go was, it's a big step up in performance and addresses a lot of those issues. SSD is slightly faster as well. Battery life, too early for me to actually, give you a number. I've only had it since Wednesday night. Was it Wednesday night? No, Tuesday night. I got it Tuesday night. So only, I have to run it down and get some actual numbers and do a couple more tests. It doesn't feel dramatically different. It doesn't feel bad to me either. Like, I basically went 2 days without charging it, and that's from moderate casual use on the couch and just chilling out and using the internet and stuff. I went like basically 2 days where I had to recharge it again. It does have fast charging, so you can slap on the Surface charger. You can charge with USB Type-C, of course. The cameras are excellent. All the features on this are super premium. The audio is premium. It's got Windows Hello, which is premium. It's got a very good front and rear facing camera. I got into a fight with someone on Twitter the other day, and they're an IT person working in education. They're saying how dumb the rear camera is. And like, Zach and I know the benefit of this camera because when we're using this at events, when we used to go to those, Zach and I were both use this for taking notes, because when you wrap the keyboard around on this and you hold it in your hand, this thing's perfect for taking notes on. And now it's even better. But having that camera is great because while you're like watching a talk or presentation, you just can be in OneNote, and then you can lift it up, snap a photo, it gets inserted into OneNote right where you are with the notes, and you just keep going. Like, this person actually said like, oh, most people just use their smartphone. Like the idea that I'm going to be in an event taking notes on this. Oh, I need a photo. Put this down, grab my phone, launch the camera, snap, put it down, pick this back up, continue my notes. And then later I'm going to go back and insert my photos into my, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like people, this isn't a camera for going out and like snapping pictures of your cats. Like you can, but it's meant to be used for snapping whiteboards and classrooms. If you're a real estate person or you're construction, you can go out and take a quick photo. But it's actually very useful, and it is a good camera. And the front-facing camera is even better for conferencing, which, as Zach pointed out, super important these days. But this is effectively, it's a mini Surface Pro. Like you really need to think of it that way. They didn't cut corners just because it's tiny. It's still got an amazing kickstand. This is the same like kind of kickstand technology as a Surface Pro has. It's fully articulating, it's smooth, micro SD card, very good display on this. Like it's a premium device, and people need to, just because it's small doesn't mean it's cheap. It is not. I mean, the whole thing is metal, right? It's premium quality. It doesn't creak. There's no plastic. It's an awesome device. The question is, do you need it? Will you be okay with working on a 10.5-inch display for long periods? And then there's the processor choice. And I always want to talk about that. Zach mentioned the Pentium. The Pentium one, so it depends on how you're planning on using this. If you have, say you're going to buy a Surface Book 3, right? Or you have a really good laptop that you're happy with. That's your main device you're going to use for work. And you're looking for a companion device, something to use on the couch at night, to go out briefly, to take with you on a weekend in case of emergency. If it's a secondary companion kind of device, you'll be fine with the Pentium. It's not a huge improvement over last year, so don't get that in your head. Or sorry, the 2018 one. Don't expect it to be a huge improvement. It'll be very minor. But you'll be fine with the Pentium. If you're looking to use the Surface Go for hours a day, like it may not even be your main computer, maybe it is, but you're planning on using it for like all day in class, then I would look to get into the Core M3. You'll definitely enjoy the experience more. And yeah, it's like $100 more or something like that, $120 more. But it's a big difference in terms of performance. But that's really how you need to view these things. So it really comes down to how you're planning on utilizing the Surface Go into your daily workflow. That can be hard to decide without it in front of you. So that's my spiel on Surface Go 2.
Yeah.
Look for the review next week. Yeah.
I'm even, because like you said, it's a premium device, but it still starts at $400, which I think is amazing. And yes, they have to skimp out somewhere, right? And I think the CPU, because I don't think the Pentium Gold inside the Surface Go 1 or 2, to be fair, is that bad. Yeah, it's not the fastest chip in the world, but it's not terrible. Like Windows, it's not an Intel Atom chip. Atoms are poor across the board. Do not buy a PC with an Intel Atom chip. They're just bad in all regards. But the Pentium Gold, I think, is fine for most people. If you're like Dan said, if you're using the Surface Go as your only device, then maybe you might run into issues here and there with performance. But if it's a companion device, then I think the Pentium Gold is more than fine for what most people are going to be doing with it. And I think the Surface Go was sort of criticized rather poorly for that reason. I think the Gold was fine for people in the non-tech space.
And this is unfortunately on Intel, right? Like I know, like we all want better processors, and it should be faster. No one's wrong. If you think that, you're not wrong. The issue is Microsoft doesn't make chips. They're and AMD doesn't make a chip here that competes either. So there's no AMD option. And they didn't go with Qualcomm for whatever reason, although that might not have been that much of a performance difference either. And Intel's doesn't do a lot in this area too. And so Microsoft really didn't have any choice. Like this was it. They could have done the Core M3 last time too, but it did knock up the price. And I've been saying that forever. The Core M3 is not a cheap chip. It's still a Core processor, and Intel charges a lot for it. I believe it's $120 more retail than the Pentium. Now, that could be all made up numbers. I know, Intel does things with their binning and stuff like that, but you know what I'm saying here. It's not comparatively cheap. And yes, it would be nice to have a faster chip. And this is where Apple still leverages their, bionic ARM chips. They do have that advantage, and Microsoft doesn't. They have to wait for Intel or Qualcomm or even AMD to really get into this space. And maybe Lakefield will be that. Maybe Qualcomm will. to really make a competitive, low-end, high-performance chip made for this device. But that's why we didn't see anything after Surface 3 for many years, by the way. I mean, they had Atom. And what did you all think of the Atom processor?
It was so bad.
How many of you were like, ooh, did Intel announce a new Atom processor for 2016? No, literally no one, because they're terrible chips. And it's only improved a little bit, right? So don't blame Microsoft for that. They're trying to do their best, but this is all they get to choose from. So hopefully that'll improve over the next coming years as more people get Surface Go and people want these kind of devices. We'll hopefully see that. So I'm gonna have to wrap up here pretty quickly. I'm not gonna be able to stick around too much longer for questions either. I got to do another briefing with a company, maybe Microsoft. I got to learn about these headphones. Anyway, though, we're going to go to Q&A. So if you guys want to start firing those off, that's cool. I'll stick around for a few minutes. If you're listening to this recorded, you don't get to, of course, hear this. Sorry about that. But you can always join us on Fridays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time on mixer.com/Windows Central or our YouTube channel, also at Windows Central. And you can follow me at Twitter on sorry, I'm losing track here. Follow me on Twitter at Daniel_Rubino or Ubino, and also on Instagram. And you can follow Zach at ZACBOWDEN. And again, look for the reviews for all this new Surface stuff, including Book 3. I'll be getting that soon in the next week and in 10 days after that. I can only do so much, but those reviews are coming out soon. So if you want to hit me up on Twitter with your questions, feel free to do that. Don't ask me how they sound. Obviously, I'm going to be addressing how they sound in the review, though. So, but other than that, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time, and stay safe, everyone.
All right, first question, Dan. What is the material of the buds, the surface that you touch? Is it glass or plastic?
Yeah, it's good.
He hung up again, didn't he? Yeah, he did. How did I know that was going to happen? Second time, Dan.
You need to really... They're sensitive, I guess.
Yeah.
They feel glass. It feels like a glass on the outside.
That would be interesting, because if you drop them, they might smash.
It's hard to tell because it's so thin.
You can ask when you do your briefing.
Yeah, so I'll put that down as a question.
Question for both of you. What do you believe Surface team is missing from their portfolio or needs to change from any existing hardware? I think Dan would argue a watch. It'd be nice if Microsoft did a Surface watch to add to their portfolio. Obviously, they're doing a phone now with the Duo, so we don't need to talk about that. Yeah, I can only think of a watch. I mean, Microsoft basically has all of its fingers in all the different markets at this point, including the phone when the Duo launches, except wearables. I mean, I guess HoloLens counts as a wearable, but I'm talking about a wearable that people can buy.
Right. Yeah, no, that's kind of it. I mean, I don't even know if they needed a Surface laptop, but I'm glad they did make one because I really like it a lot. Did they need to make a Surface Laptop Pro to compete with the XPS 15 or MacBook Pro 16? I wouldn't say no. I think we all agree it would be a cool device, but I don't know if they need to do it. So yeah, but a wearable would be cool.
Does the Surface earbuds charging case fit in the small pocket of your jeans?
Depends. It actually does on mine. But I kind of have stretchy jeans on, which is a little bit of a cheat. But yeah, they do. Listen, it's not going to be as good as the AirPods. The AirPods one is very small and slim, and it's more rounded edges. But yeah, it absolutely does fit in there. If you have a decent sized pocket or kind of stretchy ones, it totally fits. I don't know. I would carry them there all the time, but yeah, it does.
How large of a monitor can the Go 2 drive? 4K via USB-C? I think it's 4K 60Hz or two 1080p 60Hz displays.
Correct. That's correct. Speaking of what's in my little pocket, look at this little beautiful Victorinox Swiss Army knife that I got.
Nice.
Beautiful. It's a limited edition. 2020.
Lovely.
Sorry.
Will PC makers likely offer the choice of Windows 10 or Windows 10X on their laptops? What about desktops? I think yes. I think you'll see quite frequently when you order a device online from Dell or even Microsoft, you'll have the option Windows 10 or Windows 10X. I'd be surprised if you don't. Or at the very least, at least on the Microsoft side of things, it will be the consumer version launches with Windows 10X, and then there'll be a commercial variant with Windows 10 Pro. And regarding desktops, Windows 10X can technically run on a desktop. If an OEM builds a desktop with Windows 10X in mind, it would work. There's no reason why it wouldn't. But I don't think we're going to see 10X desktops for a long while. Windows 10X is aimed primarily at sort of the mobile space, and that includes laptops, tablets, two-in-ones, portable on-the-go PCs, rather than desktops. But on a technical level, there's no reason why it couldn't run on desktops.
How big are the Surface headphones ear cups inside compared to the Bose's? I think you mean the Bose QC35-2s. Those are the only ones I have. It's a good question. They're very comfortable. Like I have no issue with this. My ear tips just touch the inside a little bit, but not so much it's irritating. You can go check out my original Surface headphone review for that. I do I have a photo with the headphones versus the Bose versus the Sony's, and you can kind of see. But I think they're very comfortable. I have really no issue with the comfort on these kind of things. Is Surface Book 3 a worthy upgrade over Book 2? Really hard to answer. I don't have Book 3 in front of me, so wait for the benchmarks there and the performance stuff. Really depends on how you're using Book 2. If you're using it every day, 8 hours a day, you're crunching numbers and you're using it like that, then yeah, possibly. If you're a big fan of it, then if it's a tool, then it's always going to be a little bit better. But if you're only using it as a student and using it more as an ultrabook and you don't really need to be driving, if you're rendering or crushing numbers, probably not. It would seem like it would be a bit of an overkill. So again, it depends how you use the device and how often you're using it. Related, how good is it for driving a VR headset? That's tough because you need the right plugs. A company sent me a neat adapter. I never reviewed it. I really owe them to do it. I'll tie it in with the Surface Book though. For the review, because it's tough because a lot of VR headsets have an HDMI plug, and now there's no HDMI plug on the Surface Book. It's Type-C, so you need to use like a Type-C splitter and all this, and then does it have enough power to drive? I'll try to test that. It's kind of funny that I don't really consider Surface Book completely ideal for VR, but it's definitely possible.
Will you be able to upgrade to Windows 10X for free? No, you will not be able to upgrade to Windows 10X at all. To get Windows 10X, you'll have to buy a device that ships with Windows 10X pre-installed. So you're technically paying for it that way.
Will Surface earbuds offer any Xbox or Windows 10 functionality where the gestures could offer certain controls? So Xbox, no. So Xbox doesn't have Bluetooth, and these are Bluetooth headphones. And so it's no go. These do not work with Xbox. I should have mentioned that in the podcast, but it'll be in the review. So that's just on Xbox. You can't use them at all with that. So you've heard me hung up a couple times on the phone call with Zach. So if you, I think it's you double tap or you hold, it will hang up. So there are some gestures. I don't think the skip track works with Spotify. I'll try to find out with this, but it works better with Android and iOS in terms of that. The volume up and down does work though.
It seems only the business version of the Surface Go 2 has TPM and NFC chips. Do you think this was a mistake to not have that option on the consumer version? I'm going to say no, because I don't know a single normal human being who has ever wanted to know about the TPM or use NFC on a PC. So,
yeah, TPM is strictly for IT and stuff like that. I'm surprised that as much as Microsoft sells these for enterprise, they don't have vPro or TPM. Or they do, sorry, they have TPM, but not vPro. But yeah, these have TPM support. They all have that. Will USB 4 be backwards compatible with Thunderbolt 3? No. Thunderbolt 3 is still a different thing. There's technically a Thunderbolt 4. It's just basically a rebrand of Thunderbolt 3. But Thunderbolt and USB 4 are two different things. They're obviously a huge overlap. A USB 4 is going to be comparable to a Thunderbolt 3. In theory, USB 4 actually has two different types of data speeds, 20 and 40 gigabits per second. So it can technically vary there, but USB 4 will be a lot more universal and not relying on drivers as much. So,
how does Surface Go 2 have Instant On while not having 10th gen chips?
Does what have? How's Surface Go? Oh, yeah. I don't know. They did something with Intel to make it happen. They promoted that. It does work very well. I didn't mention that, but the Instant On is fantastic. So
I wonder if that's something to do with the magnets, and it just detects whether the magnet's been pulled or not, and it just that wouldn't change the speed of sleep wake.
And Surface Pro 7 doesn't have those magnets.
Yeah. Don't know then.
So, yeah, but basically how the behavior is right now is it seems like after 6, maybe 8 hours, I'm going to try to find out. it goes into a hibernate, and then you'll have to hit the button, and then you'll get the little. But even that's actually pretty quick. It actually resumes pretty quickly, even from that. It's about 20 seconds, I think. Maybe I got to time it, but it's fast. It's faster than what it was. But if you use it within like a couple hours of each other, yeah, you just pull down that keyboard. It's just on, and it Windows Hello kicks in. It's very fast. It does improve the overall experience. So if you're using Go frequently throughout the day, it turns on like a smartphone basically now, and it's pretty awesome.
Do you think that Windows 10X could be a good OS to the independent professional creator, much like Mac OS, or will it be targeted only to normal users? I think Windows 10X will be targeted at the same market that Chromebooks are targeted at, or the iPad is targeted at. This is not an operating system that will be marketed for gamers or heavy professionals working in things like Photoshop or AutoCAD. That Windows 10X is not an operating system for that. It's for lightweight computing devices. So yeah.
Daniel, do you think you can wear those Surface Buds for hours on end? Also, how they stay on during running? Yeah, I talked about that on the podcast today and on Wednesday. Yeah, your ears do not get tired with these. I can wear these for 8 hours, not a problem. In fact, I almost forget when they're in. I forget if I have them in. As far as running, I haven't tried. I don't see it being a problem. I've never had headphones that stay in my ears as well as these, and it's probably because they're so light. They don't bounce, they don't move, they don't shift, and all that. So, I can shake my head violently. I don't want to do it now because I feel stupid, but trust me, I can shake my head and headbang, and they're not going to fall out. It's really hard to shake these loose. But I'll try to answer that specifically for the review.
How optimized is 10X for trackpad gestures as of now? It's hard to tell. You can't really use trackpad gestures in the emulator, and Windows 10X is nowhere near done. So I think right now it's about the same as Windows 10. Nothing unique or specific to 10X.
What's the difference between Surface Audio app and Surface Headphones app? I don't know what Surface Headphones app is.
Well, Windows 10, there's a Surface Headphones app, which is what you use to just do basically what the audio app does. I'm pretty sure the Surface Headphones app is going away, and the audio app replaces it.
Yeah. Yeah. This is built up from the ground up and handles the firmwares and updates and all that kind of stuff. So,
what's the status and future of Windows IoT? It still exists. It still powers millions of, well, maybe not millions, hundreds of thousands of IoT devices around the world. It's not something that's going to be, that is at the forefront of the Microsoft's headlines and stuff. The IoT is very much a back end thing, but it's still there. It still exists, and it's still an option for people if you are somebody building an IoT based thing. If you tap the buds, do they wiggle loose? Dan, don't tap them, but do they wiggle loose?
No, I mean I'm telling you, they're pretty much in there.
I'm getting the impression that a lot of people really think that these things are really loose and like will fall out of your ears. They lock in. Yeah. It's like a key. You push in and then twist. You lock it. You lock it into your earlobe.
It's part of the design is so optimized, but like I said, it's because they're so light. They don't have a lot of mass, so they don't have any momentum, basically. I'm telling you, they're super comfortable. We can talk about the audio and debate about that all day, and the Bluetooth quality. That's definitely subjective, but in terms of comfort and being able to wear these for hours and hours on end, I don't think there's much debate. Like these things are really awesome for that, and I like the way they look. But whatever. Yeah, but yeah, probably if you go back and watch the entire podcast here, you count the number of times I fiddled with them and adjusted them. I don't think you'll find me doing it once because you just set them and forget them. And yeah, someone's your positive reviews sway me to get the buds. So versus the headphones. I mean, Microsoft has a really good return policy now that's going to affect because of COVID and you can't get to stores. I think it's 60 days you have with them. I mean, you can read my reviews, you can watch me and my opinions and see what other people say, but ultimately it's going to be what you find acceptable and have to try them yourself. But they seems to have a very good return policy. They are available in 24 markets worldwide, so you should be able to get them. I don't know, try them yourself. Ultimately, that's going to be up to you. I'm going to drop off here in 1 more minute.
Yeah, that's fine. We can wrap up anyway. Just real quick, let's see if there's a couple more questions. There's still an issue of text being cut through when edges open through both screens on the Duo. That's not an issue. I think that's a deliberate design choice because I don't think Microsoft expects you to be docking the edge horizontally like that. That's for when you're holding it vertically, so the screens are above and below. Then you can scroll and have a much longer web page, and I think that's why. And also, web pages can take advantage of dual screens as well. And so it needs to have that separation so that the web pages know where to display on page 1 and page 2. So yeah, no, I think that's a deliberate design choice, and that's why that's still there.
When will the review drop for the earbuds? Like I said, sometime next week, probably towards the end of the week.
Cool. All right, I think that's it, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week as always. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated when we go live. And until then, we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.